All right. Hey, everybody. This is a little bit different. I have with me today an Exceed player. Now, I know what you're thinking. Gearface, this is pretty regular for Gearface. You have Exceed players on frequently to talk about characters. But, dear viewer, have you considered that the character that we're talking about today is a custom character whose name is Mountain? And the person that I have on to talk about this character, arguably an expert on Mountain, but definitely the creator of the custom mountain, Aevusonian. Hi, Aevusonian.
I'm Aevusonian.
It's Aevusonian, everyone. Um, Slightly awkward. Aevusonian has been helping out with the Customs Potluck event in the Breakfast Club server, and there's a whole thing where a fan vote or a participant vote occurs to determine who the favorite um, the favorite custom character of the event was, and Mountain won. Congratulations, Aevusonian, as the
Yeah,
designer
yeah.
of Mountain. Good job. And
There was
then
no collusion whatsoever on
no
this.
collusion, absolutely not. And we'll actually get into how little collusion there was and how little opportunity collusion there was for the next thing I say here, which is that the plan for the Customs Potluck is for the tournament organizer to interview the creator of the winning character. Aevusonian, can you share with me who the tournament organizer for Customs Potluck 3 was?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you were there, you'd probably be able to tell that based on how high quality it was and how great the event went, it had to have been me who hosted the event.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
again, dear viewer, you can see the conundrum here. Aevusonian, you done fucked up because you can't interview yourself. So you had to call
I
in a
was ready
ringer.
to.
Well, yeah, and actually, honestly, maybe that could be a separate video because that sounds pretty good. You had to call in a ringer. The ringer was Moriarty. And then Moriarty was like, hey, I know someone who's interviewed someone before. And then here I am. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to just talk about this character. Um, Welcome, everybody, to this is not an episode of Excess Exceed. This is an episode of Exactly Enough Exceed. But yeah, let's get into it. So, Aevusonian, I actually first became aware of you as a customs creator, like full stop. Like I think
Really?
you're also an Exceed player, but
Yeah, yeah.
basically every time I saw your name in an Exceed context, it was customs related, and like you kind of came into this community like and dove in with both feet on the custom side of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
So not this is not your first rodeo. Mountain is not the
Oh,
first
no.
character you've made. What where so like ballpark for me, how many custom characters have you made?
I want to say around 40
Okay, so
at this point.
that's as the foremost expert on how many characters there are in Exceed, there's 120. 40 is a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
You've made a third again of the Exceed roster, and Mountain is a pretty recent uh, addition to your repertoire.
More or less. It this iteration of Mountain definitely.
Okay, but so this is somebody that you've kind of tooled around with a little bit
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
and you've brought him back in. Okay, so there's a couple of ways we could take this conversation. I feel like the most obvious one, and the one that's going to be most helpful to me as someone who, as mentioned before we started recording, literally has the Arknight Wikipedia page open in
Yeah.
another browser here. Aevusonian, who is this guy?
This guy's Mountain. He's from a game called Arknights, which isn't really that important to understanding the character. I've made several Arknights characters, mostly because I appreciate the game and the world around them, but a big part of that is I don't want you to actually have to play Arknights because it's a gotcha game, and that's the worst thing I could ever put on someone, is saying, play a gotcha game to understand what's going on here.
Okay, so
Uh,
there's a couple of considerations here. First of all, clearly you have to make Mountain cool enough that you will get the experience of playing the gotcha game without actually contaminating anybody who plays and contaminating anybody who plays it. On the other hand, you can't make Mountain so cool because then people might go investigate the source material.
yeah, that would be really bad.
That'd be
For me,
horrible,
especially.
and yeah, exactly. And how where would you be then? Your reputation would be in shambles.
It would
So
be really bad.
so you have Mountain is a an installment in the Aevusonian Arknight collaborative expanded universe. You've made a couple characters from this IP before. Do you have a like do they have a unifying mechanic the way that Street Fighter has critical or the way that Guilty Gear has canceling?
Yeah, yeah. So the specific obvious mechanic that all the Arknights characters share is this skill reference card, which is that you have a once per game action you can take, which usually costs some gauge. Um, when you do it, you flip over this card, you do the effect on it, and you're done. You never get it back.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So it's a once per game thing.
once per game, yeah. And this means that you have sort of similar to Street Fighter. You have another way that you can spend your gauge to do something powerful and unique for the character. Um, for almost every Arknight's character, the actual functionality of the skill changes dramatically based on whether you're in basic mode or exceed mode. So there is also a bit of sequencing that comes up where it isn't just, if you're going to spend the gauge on the skill as opposed to your ultras or other costs, it's also, are you going to spend the gauge on the skill before or after exceeding, which might have, different ramifications.
Sure. Because it's a one time thing. You get a cool thing, hopefully, regardless of when you do it, but it might not be the cool thing that you want.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's a significant opportunity cost to doing it early, which is that you don't have your maybe more important exceed side skill later if you want to play for that.
Right. I also noticed that Mountain, at least, is using what seems like a pretty uh, a variant of Underknight's exceed modes, like the
Yeah,
modal.
yeah.
You can exceed. You can move back and forth between your exceed modes. Is that an Arknight's season thing, or is that Mountain
No, no,
specific?
that is wholly unique to Mountain
Okay.
within the season.
Okay. So compared to other characters in this season that you're developing, um, Mountain's ability to access this skill, or rather, the opportunity cost of flipping back and forth might be a little bit less for him because
Yeah,
he
yeah.
has the ability to use his exceed mode modally.
Yeah, he's a bit more flexible in that regard.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess first of all, is is the idea of a skill, is that from Arknights?
Yes.
Okay, so
So
go ahead.
hmm, the literal thing that is happening here is that in Arknights, your units have skills that are usually on a timer that is quite long. It could be up to like 2 minutes long, where you just get to use it once, and then that unit is just sitting there doing basically nothing until it comes back. But these are like big major effects that can really help you, uh, tackle stages in different ways depending on what units you're bringing.
Okay, so in Arknights, your the deployment of your skill, the timing in which you perform it is important.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
it it so naturally it's going to translate over into an equally important uh thematic part of the character.
Yep.
Okay, sure. Um Something that I'm not a customs guy. I'd like to be, but right now it turns out there's 120 characters in Exceed, and I'm chipping my way through them. Um, but our shared friend Blue, I've talked to him about customs occasionally, and he talks a lot about like the pitfalls of Exceed as a simulationist game. Like it's
Hmm.
possible, for example, to make a character who has a block string, for example, which is like a fighting game idea that Exceed doesn't really represent directly. But the farther in you go to simulating anything in Exceed, the harder you're pushing the engine to accept it, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something that doesn't like it's not really what Exceed's built for. So let's use the things that Exceed is built for to represent these more abstract concepts. In terms of this skill idea, is it fairly one to one with how it works in Arknights, or is this idea kind of like the exceedized version, the excessive version, if you will,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of what's in Arknights?
Um, so in Arknights, skills have a much wider variety of purposes and also conditions for them. So the main thing that is a translation from Arknights to Exceed that is trying not to be too simulationist from Arknights is that these skills are one-time things universally. Actually, a very good example is in Source Mountain. His skill, his most notable skill, is only on like a 5 second cooldown, and it does very little other than change his stats around. Um, that is absolutely not what Mountain skill does within the context of Exceed, because I felt like in Exceed, if you're going to have this kind of overhead of you need to know this mechanic exists, then what it should be doing should be generally pretty big and flashy for every character. This should tell you something, major about this character that a more simulationist version wouldn't exactly tell you.
Sure, sure. And in Exceed, we have mechanics. We have levers already available to us as designers uh, to move stats around. They're called boosts, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like you could just do that. You wouldn't need to invent a whole new mechanic to do it. So
absolutely.
so Mountain's skill, or maybe skills in general, are you trying to use that design space to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do in Exceed, or is it more just like here is a source of or rather a gauge sink, not a gauge source, a gauge sink that you can use for like just a character flavorful effect and a big
It's
one.
more of the latter. Yeah,
Okay.
the skills are generally trying to convey something about the character, whether that be like your play style or the thematics, or maybe they do something that the character really, really likes to have, but otherwise wouldn't be allowed to have,
Okay, sure.
such
So
as
it could shore
an
up a
economy
weakness.
lever.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. And because I'm looking at mountain skill costs 3 gauge. Add
yep.
3 gauge from your discard to your hand. You may take the boost action. So this is a commitment. Like three
Oh
gauge
yeah.
compared to a 1 gauge exceed mode, compared to a 3 or 4 gauge ultra. Like this is one of your payouts. Doing this is something that is big enough that it's factoring into your overall economic considerations. So I assume that Mountain really wants this to make it be competitive with other things that he can do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when we get to what the implications of this ability are with the rest of the kit, it'll become very apparent very quickly that this is actually a lot more than just the written text. There are some really crazy things that happen from this.
Okay, cool. So before we get into, I want to learn about the character and his kit pretty
Mhm.
quick here. I kind of have two other questions that I wanted to get to really fast.
Yep.
One is, who is this guy in Source? He looks like a big strong cat who seems like somebody who probably, I'll bet you this guy's got a shield.
A
He seems
shield.
he seems real shieldy. He seems real
Okay.
like defendery guardian y type. Um, in terms of how how like his character, his personality, are you trying to convey that kind of stuff through his cards, or is it
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
are you trying to convey the gameplay experience of playing him in Arknights, or are they the same thing because he plays like he would be in Arknights?
A little column A, a little column B. The main thing that I want to express with the Arknights characters, as mentioned before, is that I really appreciate the world of Arknights. And a lot of the character writing is a big part of that because the characters are written, I think, very well overall. And so, um, a lot of Mountain is supposed to be conveying his actual personality, more so than his mechanical identity. I'll let you in on a little secret. Mountain's mechanical identity in Arknights is that he stands still in a place and he does decent damage, and you can't kill him.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
he's like so and Arknights, as I've learned from the Wikipedia page I have opened in my other browser, it's a tower defense game. So
Yep, yep.
he's like an area denial unit.
Yeah, yeah. He's what's called a lane holder, which is literally you put him in a lane that enemies are coming in, and he'll hold it by himself.
And you don't have to worry about that lane for a while or maybe ever
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
Sure. Okay.
pretty
So,
much.
and if that's the mechanical identity that we're trying to convey and exceed, you can probably do that on one card, right? Like that
Yeah,
is not
absolutely.
this is not a complicated idea for a character, but his
Nope.
personality might be more so. And
Yes.
so already we kind of have to deviate away from Exceed as a simulationist game
Yes,
because
absolutely.
this would make a character really, really boring otherwise.
Yeah.
So personality wise, who is this guy other than being a big cool cat man?
Yeah, yeah. So, the first thing that you have to know about Mountain is the thing that the game tells you first about him, which is that he's in jail. Um, the actual reasons why he's in jail aren't too important. He probably shouldn't be in jail. But what he has done in jail is essentially, as an inmate, he's running the jail almost. He's made his own library out of his cell. He's got significant sway over all the other inmates and some of the guards. He's a major league, almost politician in the jail, but he's not conniving necessarily. He's just a straightforward, mostly honest man who's really big and really strong and pretty charismatic. So no one wants to mess with him, especially because he's like 9 foot tall and has brass knuckles on.
Sure, yeah, and I feel like even in the context of a jail full of tough guys, 9 feet tall and brass knuckles. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe people in Arknights are bigger than I think they are, but that seems big, and
very big.
that
Yes,
seems like something that
he,
I wouldn't want to mess with were I in jail. So
he
so
lives up to his name.
in terms of, and now I'm just going to start asking about characterization ideas rather than getting into the
Yeah, yeah, no,
the
that's fine.
the exceed part of this exceed conversation. Um, when you say that he's running the jail, do you mean that he's kind of supplanted the authority of the guards and the warden, or is he kind of in bed with them?
He's kind of in bed with them, but not in the way where he's like, when you say that, it almost sounds like he's selling them information or something.
Right.
No, he's they just kind of accept him as being, just another one of the guys, as it were.
Okay, so he hasn't staged a prisoner revolution, and now he's running the prison as as like a little enclave. It's still a prison. He's nominally imprisoned there, but
Yep.
it's a you're locked up in here with me situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get you. Okay. Um, and this is where we start with him.
Yes.
And I assume that there is various narrative twists and turns throughout the game of Arknights
Absolutely. Yeah.
that is probably outside the scope of this conversation. But what we should be taking from this character in terms of what you want to convey in his cards, especially because you don't actually want people to play Arknights, because as mentioned, it's a gotcha game. He's big, he's pretty forthright and straightforward. Um, he's charismatic, he's big, he has brass
Yeah.
knuckles, he's big, he's a cat, and he is running a prison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Specifically, I have little thematic notes written down for the characters. And one of the big ideas with Mountain is shackled but not imprisoned. Where you are locked in a containment, but you're free to do a lot.
Sure, sure. Okay. So actually, that's super germane to the stuff that I was just asking about then. Like the you're locked up in here with me,
Yep, yep,
like the idea, this is for people who don't know, this is a quote from Watchmen, from a comic book. But the idea that your captivity is, if you look at it another way, uh now you have them right where you want them because
yep.
they're here too, and they can't get out through the bars any easier than you can, and you might be pretty dangerous. Um, so you mentioned having some thematic notes for Mountain. Something that I've always been curious about. Um, I think of the design process as developing a whole bunch of different levers that you can pull for to like tweak the emotional experience of playing a character. Like I can up this number and lower this number, or change this mechanic, and it will change the experience. When you have thematic notes, sometimes those things are in conflict with the play experience or with the balance of the character. Like maintaining the thematic notes might make the character too strong or too weak. What is your priority as a designer? Are you trying to make a fun character, and if you can hit the thematic notes, that's like a bonus? Or are the thematic notes as important or even more important than the play experience?
So the way I usually try to do it is the character should be fun first and foremost, because if the character isn't fun, no one's going to play them, and no one's going to be able to actually, get the thematic notes that I'm trying to hit.
Experience the thing that you're trying to.
Yeah,
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 it would be like writing a short story in a really bad font.
yeah, yeah. Like if I put my whole short story in that really ugly cursive font, you know the one. You're not gonna read it.
It straight up doesn't matter how good the story was because
Yeah,
people
yeah.
aren't going to be able to translate it from that terrible font. Sure.
Yep. And so priority number one is make a fun and a lot of the time make a unique character. That's not always a priority, the second part. Because I think there is a lot of space in Exceed for characters that do really similar things to one another. Um, but for Mountain, it was make a fun character, make a unique character, and then third, uh, sell the experience and the flavor of this character.
Okay. So this is third in your priorities list, and hopefully
Yep,
if you do
yep.
it successfully, you can get all three of these things done.
Absolutely,
Um
yeah. That's the
any
dream.
yeah, absolutely. Uh
Number 4 is balanced.
I was about to ask, you mentioned that as an afterthought, and when our mutual friend Moriarty approached me to do this interview, I haven't been paying attention to Customs Potluck whatsoever because I've been busy with XS Succeed. So I go through, the first thing I do is uh Discord search in Breakfast Club Mountain, right? Like,
Yep,
who is
yep.
this guy? Is this a character, or did Aevusonian make a big rock? I don't know anything, so let's go find this out. And among the first things that comes up when you do that is people talking about the Mountain's pretty amped as a character. Like,
Oh, yeah.
he's very, very strong, and like maybe he needs a nerf, maybe he needs buffs to be contrary. Is Mountain, like, by the standards of Exceed, a little bit overtuned? And is that a problem, or am I just like reading too much into those Discord searches?
So, this is actually kind of interesting because that is, like, an actual point of discussion currently. Um, uh, my current position on Mountain, and this might change tomorrow, is that the character is very strong. I don't think he is outside of what Exceed allows his characters. But there is another part of that, which is that one of the goals I set out with when I made Mountain was that if he was not one of if you were to make a tier list, power level wise, of all the characters contained within an Arknight set for Exceed, it would feel wrong, I think, to someone familiar with the game if Mountain was not, like, in the top 5.
Okay, sure.
And so there was some intentional decision here to make this character obviously strong.
Right. There's similar considerations. I remember when D was talking about some of the, or Blue even, I think both have talked about this publicly, some of the balancing decisions that went into the Guilty Gear season. That,
Mhm.
like, God, imagine if Soul was terrible.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What are we even doing here if Soul is terrible? He's the flagship character of your game. It has to work like that. That he has to
Yep,
be at least decent, if not very good, and he's got to feel good to play. And often things that feel good to play in Exceed are quite strong.
yep,
So Mountain, kind of baked into his design intent, is gonna be in the upper tiers of power just kind of by default.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And again, and like with customs, like you can, like, people have, again, our mutual friend Blue has made Rugal, who
Mhm.
is infamously strong and is way outside of what you're quote unquote allowed to do in Exceed, because customs customs be like that. That is okay to do in customs. Um, and as you said, balance being a fourth priority, it is still a priority. You would like
Yeah,
him to be able to be played against other, you know, maybe against Caden, maybe against Bang, but like Exceed characters.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I guess we should probably now finally get into the kit, and maybe we can reflect back on some of the stuff that we already talked about as we're going through it. But where do you want to start with this guy?
Oh, man, okay, I think the first thing to note about Mountain, is that there's a force cost of 1 right here, a 1 right here, a 1, a 2, a 2, a 2, and a 1. Then on the character card, you have a force cost of 2 and a force cost of 2. this guy has a lot of money that he needs to spend.
Yeah, and
Um,
in a lot of different places. This isn't a character who has one expensive button that he mashes
yeah,
over
yeah,
and over again. It's spread out everywhere.
yes.
Okay.
Um, it just across your whole kit to function, you got to spend a lot of money. Um, for most Exceed characters, that means you're going to be probably taking the prepare action a lot, or maybe you have, some kind of econ button in your kit that's paying you back. Uh, you might notice as well, just skimming through these cards, there's not a single card in here that actually draws a dramatic amount of cards. The two sources of card draw in your kit cost 2 force up front and draw you 2 cards.
Right. Right. So that is not a rebate, really.
Right.
That might
Yeah.
be some action compression, but that you're not up on resources from doing that.
Yes. And so the question of, okay, how do you afford all this comes to the character card. As mentioned before, uh, Mountain has a almost season 6 style Exceed mode where you can flip back and forth. And you're very much expected to, because you'll see the first line of text on both sides of the character card is when you exceed or revert, draw 3.
Okay, so that's already better than a prepare action. That's
Oh yeah.
twice as good as a prepare action for when you're doing something that you already want to do.
Oh yeah. That's just 1 gauge, flip the character card, and draw 3, which one more friend a turn, that's draw 4. Same rate as Guile. Um, very, very efficient card draw.
And when you're in exceed mode, the revert action puts a card from your hand into your gauge. That's how that works, right?
No, no. So that would be if this was an actual Season 6 style Exceed mode. Instead, Mountain, you'll see in the bottom right corner on both sides, has 1 gauge flip.
Okay, so his
They
his
cost
revert
1 gauge.
his revert
Yeah,
is is a gauge expense as well.
yep, yep. It
Got it.
is the Exceed action.
Okay.
So one of the few characters in the game who takes the Exceed action uh, several times a game, most
Okay.
likely.
So we should what you're saying is we should never allow the itch.io browser AI to play this character because
Oh, it would be
it
horrible.
has an infinite gauge sync that it can just mash over and over again.
Yeah, it would be horrible.
Sick. Okay. So I'm flipping back and forth for what I need in the moment.
Mhm.
And every time I do, I'm getting card draw that I can then spend on my various little force costs. Or pretty
Yeah,
big force costs, actually.
pretty hefty. Yeah, pretty
Okay.
hefty and consistent. Um, so the main thing to note though is that even though that is extremely efficient card draw, that is a turn that you have to spend to do it. There is no effect you get for exceeding on the turn you exceed other than getting the card draw.
Right. So the comparison that you made to Guile a second ago, that's Guile efficiency, but that's not exceed mode Guile speed.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So you can't do your action compression I exceed and strike thing.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Spending a turn to exceed or revert is a fully committal action.
Right. It's like the prepare action, but just
Yep.
more
Yep.
efficient. Okay.
Now the rest of the character card is actually less important for the most part. You kind of just have a line of text on your character card that says action, spend 1 gauge, draw 3. Uh, the rest of it is pretty real, but it's not quite that's where most of the power budget is
Right.
on this character card.
So you've got hit. You may spend 2 force if you do draw 2. Hit if you may spend 2 force if you do close or retreat 1. Okay.
Yep. So you can either cycle through your deck faster if you're on front side, or if you're on back side, you get a bit of option select and strike movement at a pretty hefty rate.
Yeah. Okay. So in exceed mode, you would probably be bleeding force a little bit faster for what you're getting out of this. Although
Yep.
it is a May effect
Yep.
on both sides. So if you hit and you're where you want to be, it's not like you're burning out your hand just by existing in exceed mode or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting. Like other characters would swap to the side that they need, right? But Mountain, because what he really wants is the card draw from
Yes.
the
Yeah.
act of flipping, is forcing you to maybe play in a mode that you don't actually want or care about, but what you really do want is that card draw, and
You need those cards.
you'll put
Yep.
up with his exceed mode or his front side when I'll take it because draw 3 is pretty okay.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Um, Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that the character is swapping between these two effectively stances as frequently as possible. And so this is my incentive to you, the player. I'll give you 3 cards. You just have to flip your character card over and give me a gauge.
Listen, I play a decent amount of like Giovanna,
Uh,
and like hit draw one, like listen, that's free value. That's very easy to mash. That's very easy to justify. There's no other competition for that resource for Giovanna. But 3 is more than 1,
oh yeah,
and I'm compelled by 1. So I'm gonna do it. I want to draw a lot of cards. So as a player, I understand the appeal of the stance switch idea.
yep,
Mountain also has his skill on the bottom here.
yep.
So we've got Made Smart and Made Dangerous. Um, you mentioned that it's a little bit less of a commitment because he does have this
Mhm.
modal exceed mode, yeah. That this
Yeah,
modal
exceed
exceed
modal.
stance, sure. That allows him to by exceeding he isn't depriving himself of his front side skill necessarily. But so we've got add 3 cards from your discard to your hand. You may take the boost action, or close 2 and strike. Your attack has some before movement and +1 power. Okay, so
Yep.
these seem to be very different use cases.
Yes.
Okay, is that I guess so we're switching between stances to get our card draw, and also to get the skill we want, and also to get the uh passive force sync that we want. Is that
Mhm.
fair?
Yeah.
And ideally, as a designer, you want all of those things to be relevant to your player who is making this decision, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In practice, how does that tend to go? Do you find players are exceeding literally just because they want the card draw, or is it because hey, in 2 turns I'm going to need this close or retreat 1 and strike, or I really need this skill coming up soon?
So the most common reasons I've seen to flip. Number one, I need 3 cards in my hand right now. That is by far the most common one. The second most common one is specifically to get this exceed side hit effect. The hit you may spend 2 force to move 1.
Okay.
Uh, and then most of the time, from what I've seen, the skills are not your reason for flipping. However, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit for this one. Um, the skills are placed on the sides that they're placed on for a very specific reason, which is that I wanted the timing of when these skills come up and feel like things that you want to use to flow perfectly naturally into your stance switching. So this more expensive 3 gauge skill on the front side, the one that gets you cards back from your discard, is probably only going to be activated after several turns of the game have passed. If several turns of the game have passed, you've probably flipped over. And then probably by that time, you're flipping back. By the time you've got, it would be 5 gauge total to use this. So within 5 strikes is when you're probably going to want this. Alternatively, if you're getting zoned out, that'll generally happen earlier in the game when you don't have the resources to contest it, or alternatively, much later in the game when you're in kind of an end game board state where the opponent has narrowed down your options to deal with being zoned.
Sure. Yeah. You've over the course of the game, you've boosted both copies of Run already.
Yeah, yeah. And so both of those situations happen when you've either exceeded once or 3 times. Most of the time, just with the way your gauge plays out, which means you're on backside, which
Right.
is when you want that.
Right. Okay. So the game state is going to inform. It's not necessarily going to inform where you're going to switch to. It's that you're going to be switching anyway, and the times in which you're going to want these skills are just going to line up naturally with what's probably going to happen in the game.
That's the goal, and that's mostly what I've seen play out.
Okay, that's really cool. It also it strikes me that having a one-time ability be the primary reason why you would flip back and forth is probably not sustainable from like a
Right,
design
yeah.
perspective, because now you've used it and you're like, well, guess I don't need to take that turn
Yeah,
off
why would I ever
anymore.
do it again?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just going to save my gauge for something else. So having that be like Oh, hey, while I'm here, that's really convenient that I get this thing while I'm drawing the cards I'm getting, and while
Yep,
I'm
yep.
getting this closer retreat on it. Um, okay, so we can think of his skill as this. It's not quite passive because you do need to use it, and it's a commitment. But
Mhm.
the game will tell you when that is going to be useful to you. Hopefully,
Hopefully, yeah.
okay, that makes sense. Um, how do we want to proceed from here? So this is his character cards. He's clearly going to be switching between them regularly. He has different things. He gets some or card cycling, and some expensive movement in strike from his character card. Where to next? Do we want to go through attacks?
Yeah, I think real quick, I'm going to pull out these three attacks: right hook, left hook, and haymaker.
Sure,
Ignore the boosts on these for
you
now.
got it.
Reason I pull these out is because these are the three force specials. Uh, Little thing about me as a designer: if you see this force special icon in the top left corner, that means the card is really dumb.
Okay, sure,
Very consistent thing for me.
sure. So
Um,
it's the like for people who are not as up on Exceed design, the reasons that you would make a force special is if it's a little bit too good to be a regular special. If you want to make your characters have very consistent wild swings, is another reason that you might do that. Um, what else? To make their economy really difficult to manage. But your priority when making a force special is that you're like, this will be funny.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you can't justify like it's that first one. It's making a special that's really, really, really good.
yep.
Okay.
And Mountain deserves to have really, really good specials. So simple solution: make him cost a force. He's already struggling for cards.
Sure,
He
yeah.
wants them real bad.
Yeah, and this also has the knock-on effect of giving you further justification to switch back and forth because
Yep,
you want to be able to afford these things.
yep.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
so the first two right here, right hook and left hook, got kind of a symmetrical names here. That probably tells you something about their function, which is that, yeah, they do form a very nice clean 50-50 mix-up into most characters. At range 2, you can throw a right hook, you can throw a left hook. Both of them give you some movement. You can go to range 3, you can go to range, well, left hook can't take you to range 1, but right hook can take you to range 1. Uh, Both of them can take you to range 3. And they both also gain advantage in addition to costing a force. They're both decently well statted. Right hook is a little lacking in stats, but there is a parallel going on here of 3-6, 6-3. Mountain punches harder with his left, so left hook is cosplaying Donkey Kick, the Ryu
Yeah,
card.
it definitely has some kick energy. This reads as a card that is very receptive to boosts.
Oh yeah,
Like if you
and
if you
we'll
put
get to boost soon.
yeah, if you put basically anything on this card, it looks pretty scary pretty fast. This thing, meanwhile, looks like a very, very nice way to deliver some bonus power. Seems very consistent and easy to hit with.
Yep.
Um, uh, they like as somebody who has not seen the rest of the kit in detail yet, I can see why left hook is a force special more readily than I can see why right hook is a force special. But
Yeah,
in
makes sense.
practice, both of these cards are pretty amped, it sounds like.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about Haymaker?
Haymaker is the third of the Trinity, which is, I mentioned both of these cards take it to range 3. Haymaker is a card that really would like to be at range 3. Because this is assault with +1 power that also forces a discard.
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, a 5 power assault already is pretty cool.
oh yeah. Um, not not gaining advantage like assault, but you've got two other sources of advantage right here, and you also have just a normal assault. So you can set up some pretty nasty chains. Um, One thing to note about all of these cards is that all of these cards are extremely good EX.
Yeah,
Um,
I was actually going to say like
Massive benefits. Yes.
the other side of being very receptive to boosts is they tend to be just really really messed up EX attacks.
Yeah. All of these attacks are amazing EX.
Yeah,
Um, and as a character who is going through your cards very, very quickly, if you want to play for these cards being EX, you can generally pretty consistently have them.
so when we go back to his character ability on front side, spend 2 force if you do draw 2. This is card cycling. You
Yep.
just find all of your you get rid of all of the cards that aren't this, and you
Mhm.
find your EXs and you just beat them up with that, and that's a legitimate line for this front side part of Mountain's kit,
Yeah,
it sounds
so
like.
the front side is enabling all of these cards by enabling you to filter for them. The backside is also doing something a little more subtle for these cards that also makes them subtly really stupid.
Yeah,
Um,
I was actually the thing that I saw was right hook with this closer
and
retreat
left hook.
one. Oh yeah, no left hook too with the push. Yeah,
Oh
now
yeah,
they're dealing with sweep much more easily. Um, honestly, is there anything? Does this lose to any normal? Does
nah,
right hook lose to any normal
nope.
when you're in exceed mode? I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, no, it just wins.
Yep. So
It wins for notably not very much.
not a ton, right? So, but it catches cross on initiation,
Oh yeah.
beats assault, beats dive. Can walk in underneath spike, backs up
Mhm.
out of range of sweep and focus. Block can't win combat. Grasp it's not in range for. Yeah,
Yep.
that's all the normals.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's why it's a 4 special.
Yep.
And really then it's a 3 force special,
Yes.
but two of the force are at option select timing. You can see whether you needed them or not.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And so the opponent it actually can play sweep specifically as a way to drain your
To
resources
make you
and
to make you
yeah,
spend force, sure.
yeah,
They're losing a
because
sweep in the process, but hey.
yep, at 3 force is a massive amount of force, and it's also a large amount of option bleed where you are saying, all right, here's 3 cards I don't have anymore.
Right.
Um, I won the strike for kind of peanuts damage, um, but here are 3 cards that I cannot play until I reshuffle. You probably won the strike if you managed to do that, even though Mountain literally won the strike.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a question mark. You know,
Mhm,
it's close whether
mhm.
you won the strike or not. But there are not a lot of things in Exceed where the outcome is you dodged sweep
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're like, did I win that strike?
Mhm,
That's a new experience for me as a like among the first things that I learned when I was doing Access Succeed as a guide series was like, wow, it's really good to dodge sweep actually.
oh, yeah.
And when I'm looking for notable things a card can do, that's like number one on the list. So it's a novel for me as an Exceed player to contend with the idea that dodging a sweep might not be good enough to justify the expense of this card. That's crazy.
But you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Um,
and so this is a some careful economic balancing to make this feel very, very powerful, but also very committal and very costly.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, you are not imprisoned necessarily.
Right, but
You
you do have constraints placed on you.
yes.
Things are going to be expensive, sure.
Yep. There's the thematic concept of the character
Yeah,
in what these cards are doing.
I buy that. That makes sense. And so similarly, left hook gets really, really amped when you add this on it for all the same
Yep.
reasons that right hook does, except you're not hitting for peanuts damage anymore.
You're hitting really
Yeah, you're
hard.
hitting real, real hard. Probably winning clean against most things. Um, does it does it also beat every normal? I feel like it at range two, yeah, kinda. It can't
Kind
catch
of.
cross
And also mutual whiff with dive.
with dive, sure. Yeah, and you probably are you're spending a little bit more, and that's gonna be a factor. Still,
Yep.
3 more damage on top of it for only a couple minor loss cases.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
That's the trade-off.
Okay.
Really ridiculous cards.
Yeah, no, and
Favorite.
also not only really ridiculous cards, but as a player, like cards that look fun to play and cards that I want to play.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of times in Exceed, there are things you can do that are really powerful that don't read as really powerful or really impactful that don't
Yeah,
read
yeah.
as really impactful. So like having the fun in the same place as the power seems like an important design decision for this guy that
That's the
by
hope, yeah.
yeah, by doing cool things, you're also doing strong things.
Um,
Cool.
one thing you will note about these 2 cards, based on everything that was just said, is that they are actually pretty positioning sensitive. The moment you go to range 1, they lose a lot of the properties that we just talked about that make them really, really strong. Like, right hook is no longer diving out of sweep. It's also losing to grasp. Left hook has another loss case into grasp. These are like actually pretty major downsides to these cards that do have these costs. And so where we get to from that is that the way Haymaker benefits from the spend force for movement effect is a little more subtle, which is that uh, being able to choose what range you're at after hitting Haymaker is actually pretty crazy.
Sure, you can find a way to hang out at range 2 from
Yeah,
range 3, kind of no matter what your opponent plays.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Or from range 1 or from range 2, Haymaker can always put you at the range that you want.
right, right, and because of how dominating these other two cards can be when they're in their preferred position versus how kind of anemic they are when they're out of that position. I mean, it's pretty tough to say that this is an anemic card in any position, but I mean, it loses to grasp. It trades with sweep. It's
Yeah.
not as much of a messed up card as it is at range 2. That in itself is a strong use case for Haymaker. That's
Yep.
interesting.
You get a similar benefit out of Assault, but just worth noting that Haymaker from range 3 can also put you back at range 3, which Assault cannot do, because this only closes 1. So you can set up some pretty dumb loops where, you Haymaker in from range 3, step back. All right, time to throw another Haymaker.
Right. And I mean, so like, a lot of times the adage for, I don't know, like Potemkin has Mega Fist, which is awfully assault like,
Mhm.
and assault or slash rather, which is even more assault like. The
Yeah,
adage
yeah.
is always like, okay, well, you use the one that gains advantage on offense, and you use the one that doesn't on defense. This feels like if you're using it for positioning the way you would for grasp. Grasp is also often a defensive card.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
do you find yourself throwing Haymaker on defense and then setting up your preferred range to throw out these cards on offense and gain advantage off of them?
A lot of the time, yeah, that's what I say.
Okay,
Haymaker is also like a really good offensive threat. Just being able to throw down a 5 speed, 5 power card at range 3 is a pretty rare privilege for a lot of characters. Um, like if you had a special that was just 1 to 3 5 5, no other text, you would play that on a lot of characters. A lot of characters would be willing to sacrifice one of their specials to get that slot.
no, yeah, that's 1 to 3 1 to 3 5 5 is some of the stats of EX Assault, the best normal.
Yeah, yeah.
God, this does look messed up as an EX attack now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
Because I love EX Assault so much, and this is just stronger and scarier than that.
Oh yeah.
So this is like our core uh big scary things we can do because they all have 4 specials on them.
Yep.
What about our other 2 specials?
These are your much worse buttons that represent more minor threats that are here because characters need 5 specials.
Okay,
Um,
sure.
so that's a little too rude to them. They are cards that do things. They just are not part of your big 3-way death ball. Immovable is a pretty bad copy of Focus. It does hit for 5, and notably, it has focus defenses of having a net total of 7 stats.
Sure.
2
Yeah.
armor, 5 guard.
Yep.
Um, Having 7 defenses, pretty great thing to have. Even if the rest of the card is pretty mediocre, which this one is. Just being able to have this card that is 7 defenses, you can play it against virtually anything, and you know you're going to get that close one.
Right. Oh, sure.
Um,
Yeah. You might not hit if they grasp you or something, but
yeah, yeah,
you'll at least get your movement out of it.
yeah. And so if they grasp you, for instance, they have to push you 2 to avoid getting hit. You close 1, you're range 2.
At range 2, you can start throwing
Yeah,
these. Sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
Um,
I can't help but notice, but the one, I guess the two, it doesn't draw a card like Focus does. The other part of Focus's effect that it doesn't replicate is the you cannot be moved effect.
right.
Clearly, you put that in the card name instead of the card effect.
Yeah, yeah. The story behind the name of this card being on this card specifically is very funny. Because I asked in chat one day, how funny would it be to have the card that is most immediately sensitive to being grasped be called immovable? And like 2 people were like, yeah, yeah. So I was like, okay, cool.
That seems good. And naturally, this is a card. So immovable is you described it as the card that is most guaranteed to get you movement.
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely movable.
Yeah, it's very movable,
It's
yes.
exceedingly movable.
Yeah, yeah.
That's its main identity, is how movable it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's very motive, even. Um,
so 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 we're using this to set a preferred range, and also, hey, 2 armor is cool. And if I
yep.
hit for 5 damage, that's like a cool bonus on top. I get some gauge out of it.
It's a pretty
But
good trade if you hit with this. You know,
yeah,
you're winning against focus
yeah,
if you connect this.
yeah, and focus is notably a very strong defensive card. Some of its defensive properties are in that after card draw, and that you cannot be
Mhm.
pushed or pulled. But immovable is going to do like a scuffed copy of one of the best cards in the game.
Yeah, yeah. It's only a bad copy of focus.
Right?
You know.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, speaking of how many people would want a 1 to 3 5/5, I can think of a lot of characters whose worst card would be dramatically improved if it was just bad focus.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then
Um,
what about forceful fist?
Forceful Fist is essentially there to complete a proper mix up with Haymaker. Um, because from range 3, if you play Haymaker, it is just a universal thing that you can just sweep against it. Even if you're on backside with the bonus movement, you can trade with Haymaker with sweep, and that is actually a pretty great trade for the person defending with sweep, because 5 to 6 is pretty close damage. But Haymaker is spending a force in addition to getting swept.
Yeah, in addition to
Uh,
losing that random card.
yeah, yeah. Which is a pretty harsh, cost for such a strong card.
Sure, sure.
Forceful Fist is there to kind of make a proper mix up with that. So Forceful Fist is before close 2 and hit push 2 move 1, allowing you to beat sweep pretty cleanly.
So it's range 4,
Um,
sure.
yeah, yeah, set range 4. Um, which I'll go back to that in a second. There's something interesting going on there. Um, So you can cleanly beat that. You can also beat focus with the move 1 if you're on backside. It's also just like a decent way to carry boosts. Put light on this, and it's pretty hard to contest this, even though the payout isn't amazing. Put power on this, and 164 before close 2 is a pretty great stat line.
Oh yeah,
What Fafnir should have been.
it's a again, it's quite receptive to boosts. Maybe not as
Yep.
notably so as these force
Yeah.
specials, but I mean, hey,
Exactly.
you're going to you. So I did unfortunately glance down at some of the boosts on these
Oh yeah,
cards.
yeah.
Yeah, you might be playing them occasionally, and you might need to hit with something else if you can imagine such a horrible fate.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
These two cards are a lot less good, but they do serve pretty important roles.
and it's interesting that like the important functions that they serve are these cards,
Mhm.
right? They're not giving you uh economic upside. They're not giving you things that you need other than, well, here's a mix up with your one of your really scary cards, and here's a way to allow for you to hit one of your scary cards.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and uh, I mentioned a moment ago the whole range 4 thing. Something I forgot to talk about with these two cards, but is also applicable here. These all do cleanly beat sweep by going to range 4 if you're on backside or have other forms of movement, which we'll get to shortly. Uh, there's a real issue with that now that we've gone through all of the specials.
Yeah.
Um,
None of
you
them
might
hit at
notice
range
that
four.
there's a range that this character does not function at.
Yeah, and it's little alligator mouth 3.
Yeah, exactly.
He cannot fight out there. His arms are not long enough. So that thing that we said earlier about how right hook can beat sweep, uh, and it might arguably be like a pretty narrow loss case for Mountain, despite it being you just beat sweep. That's kind of true of everything that beats sweep by getting to range 4 for Mountain, because what is he going to
Yep.
do out there?
Yeah, yeah. So not only you're paying the cost to, duck back out with these two cards,
Right,
or you're winning cleanly with this.
and maybe spending extra force
Yep.
for the privilege. Now you're out there and you're
You
like,
also have to walk back in.
yeah, you're like,
Which,
what do I do here? I hope I have dive.
yeah, so much good this advantage is giving me, you know?
Right. But I mean, if you had dive and you were at range 3, you could have just beaten sweep that way.
Yep.
So like, yeah, it feels bad, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so when you were saying earlier that this is there for you, and specifically the skill is there for you if you feel that you are vulnerable to being zoned. First of
Mhm.
all, I can't imagine why you are vulnerable to being zoned when you can't hit out past range 3. But also, part of the zoning that's going to be happening is you depositioning yourself.
Yep.
Like by dodging your opponent's cards, you are giving them what they want, which is that you are far away from them now.
Yeah. So
And
I have actually seen people just take the trade with the sweep, even though they have, the ability to beat it, because it's like, well, I don't want to spend like 2 force to get out and then also spend like 3 force to walk back in.
outside of like literal end game situations where like next hit wins and I have 2 copies of a card that is a checkmate
Mhm.
and I need this position being held, I can't think of a time where I've seen somebody deliberately get hit by sweep. And even then, even in those end game situations, sweep's discard effect can break a lot of those guarantees.
Yep.
So like that is very very notable to have something in a kit where getting hit by sweep might be the best option. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's some fun economy things.
Yeah, and I mean, like when you want to talk about making a unique character, you've at least created a unique gameplay experience around a normal, which is kind of cool.
Mhm.
Should we talk ultras next, or do we want to talk boosts?
Before we get to the ultras, I do want to talk about these 4 boosts. You said you glanced at them real quick, and so um, this is the other part of the character that kind of forms your whole game plan. You do have these 3 force specials that are your centralizing tools, but these alone wouldn't really be enough to like say, oh yeah, I'm actually dominant. Um, you do not have the tools to cleanly win out of these tools. So you have this really weird boost kit, um, which as mentioned, very positioning sensitive. That extends to your boosts, unlike a lot of characters. So each of these boosts has a clause, which is now range some number, draw 1 and strike. So these these boosts all get a lot more valuable the moment you're actually doing that, because not only are you getting a draw 1 rebate for boosting it, you are also getting the action compression of getting these effects stapled onto your attacks. And boy, howdy, you want these effects stapled on your attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got let's see here, +2 power. Already, I can stop, right? +2 power and
Yeah.
strike. That's already uh in some cases that's like an ultra boost. That's really really
Yep,
strong
yep,
on a character with some fairly consistent cards, like right hook,
yep.
for example. Um, that's already great. And then we
Mhm.
get a hit draw 1 and a draw 1 and strike on top of it. I can see why this is worth 2 force.
Yeah.
You've got
Um,
a speed equivalent, which is just as messed up.
yep. Range 1 only, notably, which
Yep,
is probably the worst range to be getting plus
definitely.
2
I
speed
mean,
and health
I
strike
mean
at.
the old school counter to your opponent boosted light
Yeah, yeah.
is you move to range 1 because they can't spike you or dive you anymore.
Mhm.
So this is deliberately, well, you're gonna have to contend with just hitting with a really really amped up left hook. And actually,
That
honestly,
you
the
can't dive over.
yeah that you can dive out. Yeah, um, honestly, the card that feels most at home with this +2 speed is Haymaker, which I'm sure is
Mhm.
intentional.
Mhm.
That you would boost the card that you would really want to strike with that boost.
Yeah. Um, so the really exciting one, before as mentioned before, is the +2 power one.
Right.
Because range 2, this is notably the only one that triggers on range 2. Well,
Yeah.
you play the sweeping stance, here are 2 attacks,
Yeah.
make a nice clean 50-50 mix up with an additional, 2 power on it,
Yeah. That
crush just about everything.
you've thrown you've now there's now this beats everything but for more damage,
Mhm.
or this doesn't beat everything but for underlines 3 times more damage.
more damage.
And
Yes.
also, this is the one that you are unlikely to use at range 2. This attack, rather, is the one that you're unlikely to use at range 2 anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's a little bit of hand holding going on to help you
Yep.
find the cool thing that this card can do.
Yeah.
And what this the cool
Um
thing this card can do again is facilitate these other cards.
Yep, both sides of this card exist to make the rest of your kit more functional. Um, so then you get to the boosts on these two. So you've played your sweeping stance, hit for a bunch of power. You have these two cards that either one you could have played. Let's say you play right hook. All right. Okay. So you play right hook, hit for 5, gain advantage. Let's say you duck out 1. Okay, well it's time to boost overhand because now you're at range 3. This one's ignore armor, hit move 1. Now draw 1 and strike at range 3. Ah, how good that I have this 1 to 3 5/5 card here that might just love having ignore armor on it.
Sure, sure, sure. Okay,
And
so
oh,
so
what's
so
this? The good part of this card from the backside is that it gains hit move up to 1. Oh, this boost just gives it to me. So you're telling me right after landing my 8 power left hook, I can now go into a 5 power IA card that also sets back up whatever range I want?
so
Joy.
when you were talking about those loops earlier,
Mhm.
uh, with your various little positioning tricks that allow you to sort of stay in this range or duck in and out of this range, this is kind of I mean, this is like magnifying the effect of them. This is accelerating the effect of them. That
Yep.
you are moving back to the range that you want to be moving to anyway.
Yep.
And then
Um,
this one is a hit. You may move 1, so it's got that in common here. The opponent cannot move past you.
yes. This
So
is
give
by
me.
far the most niche one.
I was gonna say, yeah. So the use cases for these ones jump out way more readily to me. Where are you finding use for this?
So the actual thing that this says is that the opponent can't play dive. Um, you have this card right here that does have a decent susceptibility to dive. But the actual place where this boost is coming in is just the fact that you can maintain corner with it on a character who, once again, is really sensitive to people walking outside of his effective range. You can use this to make sure, okay, yeah, we're going to keep this corner. No matter what, you're not leaving it.
Right. At least unless they push you away and they're still stuck in the corner, you walk back in then. But at the
Yep.
very least for this strike, we're throwing things on my terms.
Mhm.
Okay.
And there is something to note, which this boost displays most prominently because it's probably the best use case for it. But none of these boosts have to be played at their effective ranges. All of them are real boosts that you can play. You know, ignore armor, hit move 1 is a real boost. +2 power, +1 speed, or +2 speed, hit draw 1. These are pretty steep prices, but you're still buying fierce or light.
Sure.
Those are
Yeah.
good things to buy.
Yeah, and
Um,
I mean, Fiercer Light is probably a little bit undercosted on the normals anyway. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of like grandfathered in. It might not be worth 2 force when you're not getting the now strike on top of it, but I mean,
If you need
it's
them, you need them.
if you need them exactly, and that's something that might come up a lot, especially with a character with this steep of an economy.
Yeah. The most prominent one is the Colombian clinch outside of range 1. This will stay in play, so you're not striking with it. You can boost this while you're not at range 1 to just set yourself up as a
Oh,
wall.
this is a passive effect. Sure, they're
Yes,
saying
yes,
okay, the next strike that happens, I don't care when it happens. It's going to happen with you sandwiched between me and this corner.
yes.
Okay.
And you know the really important part about that is they also can't like boost run or any efficient movement to get
Sure.
out of.
Yeah. They can't spend force. They cannot move past you. Period.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. So all of these boosts are kind of modal in that sense, but Colombian clinch really exemplifies that as yeah. This is 2 boosts in 1.
Right. And honestly, where like the use case for the non-strike version might actually match the strike version.
Yep.
Although I mean, draw 1 and strike is
Oh yeah.
that draw 1 feels pretty good. I'm sure.
Draw 1 and strike is a pretty great reward. Originally, these boosts, to go through the design lineage just a little bit, they did not say draw 1 in addition to the strike. And they felt a lot more stifling to play. Um, because they aren't, top tier effects. They're just good effects that you're stapling on with this kind of restrictive set of conditions. So getting this bonus draw, it just makes them feel fantastic.
Cool. Yeah. No. Yeah. These seem very similar to how the attacks work. As like when I was talking a second ago about like having the fun and the power being in the same place.
Mhm.
The the amount of joy you were describing in the overhand into haymaker
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
combo, I can imagine a player, especially a new player, who sees that in their hand and is like, "Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute." And then they put a bunch of cards together and they do something really strong. That like that if that's their first experience doing that, that feels really good. That's like one of
Yeah,
the reasons that
absolutely.
people play Exceed in the first place. So having these things as like it's a slightly less. Hold on a second. It's a slightly less. Oh, I'm on the other side of the board. Oh no, I'm on the blue side. Um, all Kai over here, for
Mhm.
example, is way more I have references, is way more explicit about his intentions here.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
like, where is it? It like
Like a
literally
trade
says
address?
range
Yeah,
2
yeah.
on it, or it before close to hit range 2. Like they're being very explicit about, hey, you know what you want is to land at range 2 with this effect.
Mhm.
And that is like Kai is kind of a very newbie friendly character. You're holding their hand a little bit more explicitly there. But this has a similar feeling of like that, hey, if you put these cards together, you did something really cool. Doesn't that feel awesome? And it's leading you to the fun a little bit, just a little bit less explicitly than Kai is doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And on a character who is this complicated or who has this many sort of levers that you can manipulate and so many different payouts that he can go for, that handholding seems like it'd be very valuable to keep him from being uh decision paralysis the character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's a cool like that you're catering to the playability of the guy in addition to the power of the guy.
yeah, yeah. Um, Flavorfully, what these are all trying to do, because that is a big part of it, is that these are literally combos. The character, uh, there's no actual mechanical reason in source why he would play like this, but it felt really right to me to his character and the way he's designed that this character should have really crazy. You mentioned earlier block strings, actually.
Yeah.
This character should have really crazy block strings. If Mountain were in a fighting game, that's what he would do. That's what all of these boosts are representing. Is
Sure.
that you have these layered effects that are stacking on top of each other to make all of these attacks really dumb. And that's combining with your character card, all these boosts, the hit effects on all of these cards to just say, all right, here's my 4 hit effects. You
Right.
know, I'm stacking all these on top of each other. I'm beating you up.
Deal with this. Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
that feels cool to the mountain player. Honestly, it might feel kind of cool to the mountain opponent because they're like they're at least getting beaten up in a very cool, impressive way.
Yeah, very stylish.
Yeah.
Um, the last boost of the specials is Insider here, which breaks the trend. But it does so for a pretty specific reason. The Insider is just to look at the opponent's hand, you may move one. Um, this is a boost which does very little by itself, because looking at the opponent's hand doesn't actually matter. And you can't beat it, right?
Right.
Like I don't care if I know that you have EX Assault if I can't do anything about it.
Sure.
But it also has this you may move one. That you may move one after seeing the opponent's hand in a kit full of effects that are extremely positioning sensitive means that you get to boost this to say, all right, no more gimmicks from you, no more crazy mix-ups you're throwing at me. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna look at your hand, I'm gonna go to the range that my hand supports the best, and you're just going to have to deal with that.
Right.
You know, I'm throwing some stats at you. Guaranteed next turn, I've got something in my pocket that is really good at this range. Figure it out.
Yeah. Sure. So, and I mean, this compared to some of these other ones, especially maybe not Forceful Fist, but Immovable, you've described as being like quite a bit less overwhelmingly awesome than your
Yep,
four
yep.
specials over here. It's paired with a boost that it's not overhand. It's not any of your big scary like sort of Leo style +2 power and strike stuff,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
it's a useful utility player. It is matched with the card that it's on pretty intentionally. It seems like,
Yep,
and
absolutely.
they're both going to get you a little bit of movement that lets you play the rest of your hand. It's just going to depend on like what kind of utility you're going to need.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so this boost, I think, is one of the ones in the kit that has kind of the most uh, subtle timing on it. A lot of the time when I've seen people play this character, they start out by boosting this basically always.
Hmm.
Because it's a free copy of a whiffed parry, and you
With
get you
Parry,
get the
sure,
movement
yeah,
off of it. Yeah,
that's pretty
that
cool.
seems great. Um, the issue is that unless you're doing this with a hand of cards that then you can transform this movement into a dominant position on the board, um, you're wasting a turn on a character who has these such incredible tools where it is your turn and you get to initiate with these effects or boost these and get these bonus effects on them, that giving up that is such a massive tempo loss.
Right.
So this boost is like you said, very intentionally placed, where it's on the card that is a lot less exciting, um, to kind of indicate, yeah, this boost is not something that you love to use, but
Right.
it
You'll
is
do it.
something that helps glue your kit together. Yeah,
Yeah, it feels like a very skill testing boost.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, Aevusonian, I can't help but notice that there are two
Yeah, we
cards
got
over
two cards
here,
over here.
and they've got some big numbers in the corner here that I want to learn about.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about neither of them and talk about the boost on this one first, because
Perfect.
it's relevant to the discussion we just had. Mansfield Break, +2 power now, strike after if the opponent was stunned, draw 2 for 2 force cost on an ultra boost. That's a
Yeah,
whopping 4 force
that's
you're putting
really
down for
really
this.
expensive.
Yeah.
And there's a natural comparison here to Sweeping Stance
Yep.
without the range restriction on it,
Yes.
which is
Um,
cool.
this is your +2 power boost that is also getting your draw 2, which is a little less good than Sweeping Stance, but yeah, you can use it wherever. And this is playing into the whole thing of, yeah, it's my turn. I get to do something really crazy where I get to staple some stuff together and beat you up with it. Um, pretty simple boost. It's also a referential boost, to another character, uh, which we can get to by talking about the Ultra as well. Um, so we talk about Price of Freedom real quick.
Sure.
Um, Price of Freedom is an ultra with a really whack stat line with before close 173 with 5 guard. Very comparable to Left Hook. Just
I was
with an
about to bring
additional
Left
power.
Hook over and
Yep.
just look at the two side by side because
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot in common here. This is
Yes.
literally 1 point without looking at the bottom of the card,
Mhm.
or this bolded text on the card. At least this is 1 point of
Yeah.
power better, and that's
Yep.
basically it.
For 3 whole gauge, what are you talking about?
Of
What kind of a,
course.
well, it's got some very important bold text on it, which is that if the opponent is cornered or very close to being in the corner, this suddenly becomes 6 speed.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but 176 with 5 guard and before close 1 sounds just about unbeatable to me.
Now it's both hooks.
Yes, it's both hooks at the same time,
What
but
what
even
if
better.
what if you could have, instead of a mix up, an I win?
Yeah, yeah. What if I punch you with both hands?
Oh
What then?
man, there you go. Okay, so you talked about this being a reference to something. Is there
Yeah.
another character in Arknights that does something like this, or an
No,
equivalent?
this is actually a reference to Exceed. So Mountain in Arknights is a bit of a boxer. He's got some pretty boxer related terminology going on with him.
Left hook, right hook.
Um,
Sure.
yeah, yeah, and in source that's expanded upon a little more because they talk about his fighting style a little bit. Um, this card is a direct reference to a card from an unreleased official Exceed character,
Oh, this is
uh,
Belrog.
which is Boxer. Yeah, Balrog.
Yeah.
This is one of his ultras. Um, it's a little different. His is 8 power and has no guard.
Okay.
Is the main difference. But this is a pretty direct reference to that because I think design lineage is a really cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and also that character doesn't actually exist and isn't playable.
Right.
The boost
Right.
is also a direct reference to that character because the text of that character's character card is, when you initiate, you may spend 3 force for +2 power, and after if the opponent was stunned, draw 2.
Okay. So you are like this has to be something that the character wants and needs anyway. Like the
Yep,
reference can't be a good enough reason to include it.
yep, yep.
But if you're getting a good thing out of it and this is what the character wants, the reference feels like free real estate to me. It's like,
Yeah,
why not?
you already want to be cornering the opponent. That is one of your biggest win states, is when the
Right.
opponent is in the corner.
Right.
Um, you already want that. And also, the stat line of this card lines up with something that you would love to have, And also, it's a combination of these two cards, which is a pretty big flavor win. And also, I can sneak in a reference to a character that I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to that hand holding idea for a second, like you could never actually get into a position to play this. Like you could be looking at the character's kit before your first game with the character, see that he gets a benefit from uh cornering the opponent, and
Mhm.
then being like, this goes to the bottom of your deck, you never see it, it never appears, it never happens. That's still in your mind that,
Yeah,
oh,
you know that you need that.
I want to be cornering my opponent, even if it's not to play this card. It's
Mhm.
to do all the other stuff that gets really scary when my opponent's in the corner. So like having that bolded text there is like a little tooltip that pops up and says like, hey, you want this, even if it's not
Yeah,
for
yeah.
this card.
Yeah, you care a lot about a positioning. You care a
Yeah,
lot about the opponent being in the corner.
right,
Uh, you should play for that.
right, sure, sure. Whether this card or not. And then what about uh Earth Shattering Smash?
Earth Shattering Smash is a completely broken card.
Okay.
Um, it costs 4 gauge. To bring over the character cards real quick, just a reminder, to have a functioning economy, you need to spend 1 gauge basically every strike.
Right.
Because you're probably spending about 3/4 every strike.
Right. Right.
Um, Earth Shattering Smash costs a mighty 4, so it better do something ridiculous. And that it does. As this is a 1 to 3 card with sweep defenses, one of which is armor. Um, so I don't know, you can lose to like overpower axe kick. Real tragedy.
Right.
Um, but it's got +1 speed on it, and a hit effect that is completely ridiculous. Um, it says any number of cards at random. This is hit discard your hand.
It better be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is hit discard your hand, draw a new hand of the same amount of cards, and also get like +5 power.
Right. So
Um,
like unless the things that you have in your hand at that moment are literally exactly the cards that you need,
yep,
go ahead. Just
yeah,
to have fun, hit for 13.
yeah. Just kill the opponent,
Yeah.
and get a whole new hand for free. There is some kind of interesting give and take with this though, because as mentioned, this is 4 gauge on a character who needs to spend 1 gauge to draw 3 to get your economy going.
Right.
If you're spending the gauge on this ultra, that means you're probably not spending very much on your character card.
Right.
If you're
Sure.
not spending on your character card, you're not drawing that many cards.
Your
For
hand
this
isn't going
card
to
to
be
function,
your hand isn't going to be big enough
yes.
to throw this to make it be a backbreaker.
So this is the absolute, if you're winning the game, oh my god, you're going to win the game.
Right.
If somehow you manage to weave through your economy without ever needing to spend, and you just ended up where the opponent, doesn't have a dive up, doesn't have a block up, and you just can slam this down on the board, no cross at range 1 or anything.
Right.
Yeah, your payoff is you get to hit for like 12, and
Right.
you probably win off that.
Sure. Yeah. I
Um,
imagine. Yeah. Honestly, you'd better. Like
yeah, yeah,
that's a with no with a fresh set of cards with the card quality that this guy's got. You can probably put something together to do the rest of that
oh
life's
yeah,
worth of
absolutely.
damage.
Um,
But the fact that it is so in competition with his stance shifting,
mhm.
that actually doesn't come up super often. It sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. Earth Shattering Smash is not very commonly played by most people I've seen play this character,
Okay.
which is kind of awesome because I'm pretty sure I should nerf it. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
even though no one's playing it.
It's busted and yet.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it is, I think, deceptively hard to play on multiple different fronts.
Yeah.
Um, which almost justifies it being this completely ridiculous power crept copy of Sweep.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then Sinner's Path. Before, discard up to 3 cards at random for each card discarded, +1 power and close 1. Okay, so we have kind of an anti-zoning tool, a really scary
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Just a good old +3 power before close 3. At the cost of everything I owned, and
Yeah,
also I'm taking out a loan.
yeah, yeah. Honestly, yeah. On an ultra, a force, 3 more
Yep,
cards.
yep,
You'd better need to get in there.
yeah. And so this is your one thing across your entire kit that you can do outside of range 1 to 3.
Right.
This is the sole thing you get, and it's pretty darn scary. But once again, very, very expensive on a character who would really like to be not, running out of cards frequently. It's not an attainable goal to not run out of cards, but having to put down this many on this one effect feels pretty harsh.
From
But the
a,
upside,
I'm sorry,
mhm,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
the upside is this left hook card looks pretty great when it's 1 to 5 and hits for 9.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean when you take it when you take consistent cards and then give them before movement and power, you're
Yep.
doing all right for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Something that I noticed from like a characterization and flavor perspective, this guy is like a trained, like, he's a boxer, right? Like in a
Mhm.
similar vein to Balrog from Street Fighter. He's he's not throwing throwing strikes wildly or anything like that.
Yep.
This card, having
Oh
read
yeah.
the flavor text on it,
Oh
but
yeah.
also having read the self random discard, feels like a berserker move, right?
Yep.
In a way that left hook, right hook, these kind of like very practiced, very precise hits. This feels like a very like beast within the the chains are off situation. So
Yeah.
is this representing him kind of like both sides of this card, not just the the altar itself? Is this representing him just kind of flipping out and bashing you into the ground?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so
Um
is it important to you as the designer then that that self random discard doesn't appear anywhere else in the kit?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you'll very much notice that this is the only card in the entire kit that says random.
Yeah, and
It is
except
nowhere
the ones that
else.
do it to your opponent.
No, no, even those are not random.
Oh, you're right.
There is
Nice.
no random in the entire kit other than on this card.
That's really
And it
cool.
appears twice here. And it's
Yeah.
your own cards.
Yeah, so he's so this is him freaking out. It's it's very analogous to the you may spend two if you do draw two, except that it's a
Mhm.
it's a random effect instead. So he's feral.
Yep.
That's a very cool characterization note. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm very proud of this card for doing that because this line, the flavor text on this card is one of my favorite quotes in the game.
Yeah.
Um and I felt like I had to, demonstrate this character with this card with this flavor text.
Right, sure. And so it has to stand out, and one of the ways that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
make it stand out is have it be mechanically it has very much its own identity.
Mhm.
Okay, that's really cool. So that's a kit. We've got all of our 7 cards. We've got a lot of really really mean messed up things that we can do to our opponents, which is awesome. I have a couple of questions, but
Yeah, yeah.
before I go into them, anything else you want to mention about the way this character plays?
Um I suppose all I'd want to say about that is that from what I've seen of people playing the character, I generally make a habit to not play my own characters.
Okay.
Just because I feel like that influences my perceptive of them or my perception of them in a way that I don't actually find conducive to making them.
Right.
So all of what I get to experience from the characters that I make is other people playing them.
Sure.
Um, and from what I've seen from the character being played, he's awesome. He's hitting basically every note that I want him to hit, which is a pretty stellar thing for me to say as a designer is that I can see other people who generally have no clue who this guy is
Yeah.
jump into the character and play him in a way that I think is expressive of who the character is and all the mechanical cool stuff that he's got without me, having to step in and say, by the way, here's how you should play the character.
Right.
There's some
So
subtle stuff going on with the kit, and more direct stuff like, by the way, you should corner the opponent.
probably corner
But
the opponent.
yeah, yeah,
The Kai thing of like play
yeah, yeah,
this at range 1. You'll do a cool thing if you do.
yeah, yeah. There's that, but also the rest of the design language of the character is kind of telling people how to play him, and it's a pretty great success and very very satisfying to see people take this character and engage with him in ways that I both want people to and also didn't expect, but turns out to be, you know, exactly what he should be doing.
It feels, I mean, it feels like the fact that we're having an interview that is necessitated by a bunch of people who played this character voting and reacting to
Yeah,
him
yeah,
favorably enough to vote for him means that, like, oh hey, you succeeded. You did a great job with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that one of the things that makes an interesting Exceed character to an Exceed fan is the character's like resistance to being solved, right?
Mhm.
Like if you have a lot of cool things that you can do such that um it doesn't form into an obviously strongest line for quite a while. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
That's something that we tend to like as players because it makes every game different and all that stuff. So I've seen a couple of your customs before, and Mountain definitely has this going on. There are a lot of levers on your
Mhm.
characters. You have a lot of places that your characters can spend force, a lot of like uh a lot of buckets that their economies can go into. It seems like that helps fight against that solvability
Yeah,
to
yeah.
to make it so that the characters aren't like they're complicated. You tend to make fairly maybe not fiddly to play, but there's a lot going on under the hood with a lot of your characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Do, what are the implications of that for balancing a character? Does it make it harder to well when you have all of these levers, does that make the character's like internal ecosystem so sensitive that you can't tweak any of the levers and balance the character? Or because you have so many levers, does that actually make it easier? Because there are more
Um,
things you can mess around with.
so it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B because one of the major things that you kind of have to fight against when you are balancing a character in this way is that if your goal, and this is my goal a lot of the time, is to give a character several different really exciting things that you want to be able to spend on.
Right.
But you can't go for all of them, you just don't have the money to do so. If you're doing that, you do have to make all of those options appealing.
Sure,
Um,
definitely.
and encouraging people to spend a lot of cards is harder than it sounds. A lot of Exceed players are actually pretty reticent to the idea of, spending three force to do something
Yeah.
really awesome
Two
because,
force on the two force on this ridiculous, absolutely cracked boost. No way.
yeah, 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 because these are my cards. I want to play them.
Yeah.
Um, and so actually getting people to want to engage with that is actually pretty tricky. So you end up with a pretty big um you end up with a pretty big gap between players that are more experienced with the game and players that are not.
Definitely. Yeah.
Um and so one of the biggest issues with balancing characters with this kind of philosophy is that yeah, they will get radically different results based on the skill level they're being played at. And that's
Okay.
not just for themselves, like the player playing them, but also their opponent, where the environment that they're being played in can give you some really, really conflicting feedback.
Okay.
So for a lot of my characters, I will simultaneously get information that the character is really bad and is really broken, and it basically just comes down to who was playing them.
Sure, sure. And what was their opponent able to navigate the really scary stuff that they were doing
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not?
And so because of that, that kind of comes from the whole idea of, oh yeah, give them all these things that are ridiculously expensive and give you, really exciting things you can do. Because it gets kind of hard to figure out what the good balance feedback. All feedback is good feedback,
Sure.
but what the good, like, informed balance level feedback is, and what is just like a maybe thematic concern.
Right. Or the,
Um,
the the feedback that you action on without
yes, yeah,
any without any interpretation required. There are some people who will tell you this is broken, and the way that filters through to your designer brain is like, if this person is telling me it's broken, it's probably about right.
yeah, yeah.
Or if they're saying this character is perfectly balanced, you're like, he probably
Oh
needs a
god,
buff then. Yeah,
oh
we
god,
we
yeah. No,
we,
this
we
is
need to
concerning.
tweak him up a little bit to compensate for that. No, yeah, but like there are some people who you trust enough or who have similar design sensibilities to you that you can take their feedback and be like, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. Like as a practical example, because we've brought him up several times. Blue tends to design in a really similar way.
Yeah.
Um, which like there's once again some design lineage here going on, where a lot of like my ideas for what makes characters especially interesting or custom characters comes from I've played a decent amount of his characters, and the things I formed from that are influences on what I do. And
Right.
so generally, if I can generally trust if he has played one of my characters, very rare, but sometimes happens, he's probably going to give me some feedback that is like direct to how I want to design the
To your
character.
sensibilities, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The way that
Um,
the sort of like archetypal blue character for people who hasn't played his characters to me is like, here is an impossible economy puzzle. If you solve it, unimaginable power is yours. You you are a god as long as you can uh manage this incredibly difficult tight economy.
yeah, yeah. Um, and my design style does differ from his like a decent bit in notable ways, but there is some like I said, design lineage going on here.
Sure, sure.
Um, Whereas for some other players, yeah, their feedback I have to kind of analyze a bit more closely to determine what exactly is meant or what I can do about
Right.
the feedback if I have to do anything about the feedback. Because
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
some
Yeah, I
players will naturally dislike this kind of character.
yeah, no, and you need to be able to like a designer cannot go with every tide that comes their way, right?
Absolutely, yeah,
Like
yeah,
you do need to have like a vision for the character, and if the feedback conflicts with that, that's okay.
yeah,
Um, so like I feel like there's an entire skill that is slightly separate from actually designing a character and like tweaking the numbers and developing a character that is just like the social aspect of
yeah,
of soliciting and actioning on feedback
yeah,
that
yeah.
is really hard.
It is really hard, yeah. And by far the hardest part of designing characters for me, even
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, you've done 40 of them.
somewhere around
Presumably,
that, yeah,
yeah, presumably some parts of the process have been kind of ironed out. But
yeah, yeah,
but that uh the part where it leaves your brain and goes into the wild where other people are, that's still tricky.
yeah, absolutely.
And probably just by virtue of the fact that there's other people involved, this is a much more complicated puzzle. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, hopefully that continues to always be fun for you too as a designer. That when
yeah,
it,
I'd hope so.
especially because you're not playing your own characters, so like this is the only way that you're interacting with these designs is watching
Yep.
people play them. So it had better remain fun. Well, cool. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to ask you about. I hope that you are proud of Mountain here. I think you've made a very very cool character. I feel like he's the latest in a long lines of cool characters you've made. I hope that you're proud of his representation in the Customs Potluck. Um, I would say, you know, next time don't make such a baller character and also run the tournament.
Yeah, yeah, that was a real mistake by me. I
Yeah,
mean,
how could you?
to be fair, the player who brought the character, I didn't expect to actually participate because I thought it would be busy. Um,
Is this
so I,
Moriarty?
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I didn't actually expect that this would be the series of events that took place.
Well, I'm glad it was. It gave me an opportunity to do a fun interview. I learned a little bit about a character. It doesn't this does not mean that I'm going to do uh custom character access succeed for every other custom that everyone's ever made. But
Oh
I'm
joy.
yeah, I'm
I've
really
got great news. Poulter has just assembled a list of about 500 custom characters all in one place.
yeah. I have to end the call immediately. Um, I'm going to flee the country to somewhere that doesn't have internet. Listen, honestly, we can talk about Poulter. Poulter, I'm calling you out. We can talk about Poulter's list of 500 customs after he's given me my court mandated access exceed lessons on the characters that he owes me. Um, no, for serious, that actually sounds kind of cool though. So I'll talk to him about that sometime. Yeah, but this was fun. I liked
Yeah, yeah.
learning about this. It's always fun talking to you, Aevusonian. Um, anything else you want to mention? Hey, actually, I do have something else I want to mention. Everybody go participate in Customs Potluck 4. It sounds like a good time.
Yep.
Aevusonian, I don't think you're running that one. I think
No,
Surf
no,
is
I'm
back.
free this time.
Yep, Surf, that devil has returned.
Yeah,
So
he's taken this from me.
yep.
I mean, I ran it better, of course.
Of course you did. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah. Of
designed
course,
such a
of
great
course.
character. Um so Hope will now simply just win the fan vote again and we can do another interview. And now that Serp is back, there's no conflict anymore. So it's great.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, folks. I'm gonna call it there. I learned everything there is to know about Mountain. I learned everything there is to know about Aevusonian. He's doxed himself multiple times, but he doesn't know it.
What?
Um, there will be people coming to his house shortly.
What?
Oh yeah, you didn't think about that, did you?
Who's knocking on my door?
You better go. All right,
I, I,
everybody.
I gotta get out of here.
Aevusonian's got to get out of here. I'll see y'all for another one later on. Goodbye, everybody.
Oh my god, is that a taser?